Hey guys, tonight we travel back to a land where time was carved not in stone, but in the quiet rustle of cornfields. Under a sky laced with gods and prophecy. You're standing on the cool stone steps of an Aztec temple. Barefoot, wrapped in cotton cloth, and slightly confused as a line of barefoot priests guides you toward the eastern horizon. The air is smoky from incense, copal, they call it, and somewhere a conch shell sounds like a whale trying to sing opera through a traffic cone. This is not a vacation. This is the start of the Aztec year. And you're here as a witness. Or maybe a participant. You're not sure yet. The sun isn't up, but already, there's this palpable tension, as if the very act of the sun rising hinges on the corn prayers you're about to hear. Spoiler, it doesn't, but it sure feels like it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is there. Let's turn this weird corner of the internet into a global campfire. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The priest closest to you wears a necklace strung with dried maize kernels. Each one dyed a different hue: red, white, black, yellow, each color tied to a direction, a god, and 1/4 of the year. He doesn't speak, he hums. It's low, rhythmic, and oddly catchy. You try to hum along but immediately get a look from a child priest nearby. The kind of look that says, "You're ruining the vibe." As the sun peeks over the mountains, golden light breaks across the rows of corn planted on the temple's eastern slope. But these aren't your regular backyard stalks. These are ceremonial maize, planted precisely, grown under chance, and harvested only when Venus aligns just so. They glisten with dew, as if the gods themselves sprinkled them with approval. And then, bam, the first real mainstream historical moment hits you. This sunrise marks the beginning of the Aztec solar year. The Xopahuali, which totals 365 days. And the reason you're here so early? This calendar doesn't start with January, or Monday, or whenever someone sobers up after New Year's. It starts with corn, more specifically, with rituals that signal when to begin planting it. Because in this world, time isn't measured by clocks. It's measured by maize. The priests begin a circular march around the temple courtyard. Every step lands with purpose. You're told each movement corresponds to one of the 20-day signs of the Aztec sacred calendar, the Tonalpohualli, but let's be real. You're just trying not to trip on your borrowed sandals. The air thickens with the smell of roasted cornmeal. Somewhere nearby, someone's baking tamales over an open flame, not for dinner, but as an offering. You'll learn later that food wasn't just sustenance here. It was language, prophecy, math. You might laugh now, but yes, entire festivals were calculated around the availability of ingredients. A priest stops and hands you a small ear of dried corn. You accept it awkwardly, as though you're at a wedding and someone handed you the bouquet. This, you're told, is Sedli, the sacred symbol of maize. Each ear is harvested during a precise phase of the moon. Each one becomes a physical token of time's passing. Like a divine hourglass, except snackable, probably stale, though. Then something odd happens. The lead priest stops walking. He lifts his arm and points toward a star that still barely glimmers in the pinkening sky, Venus. The morning star. It's bright enough to be seen. Just barely. And its position tells them something. One priest whispers to another, who jots something down in a bark paper codex. They nod in solemn agreement. You lean in hopefully. One of them glances at you in deadpans. Good day for planting. Bad day for haircuts. And yes, they're serious. Here's your quirky historical tidbit of the evening. The Aztecs didn't just use their calendars for crops or sacrifices. They used them to decide when to get a haircut, when to abstain from beans, or even when to start building a house. Entire lives were planned according to the sacred movement of corn and cosmos. Historians still argue whether the priests truly believed the stars and maize were intertwined, or if this system was more about maintaining power through ritual and mystery. But when you're here, barefoot and blinking at a sunrise smeared with divine symbolism, it kind of doesn't matter. You believe, if only for a moment. You're ushered down from the temple and led toward the fields. But this isn't farming time. This is alignment time. Priests line up stalks to the horizon, measuring shadows, angles, maybe the tilt of your confused expression. A priest whispers, "The earth tilts for no one." But corn listens. You don't know what that means. But you nod like it's profound. The ceremony ends with a flute made from bone playing a soft, eerie tune. You realize time doesn't feel like a clock ticking here. It feels like breath. Like wind rustling through corn leaves. Like a calendar made not for managing meetings, but for aligning souls with soil. As you walk back through the temple corridors, ears still ringing with flutes and feet slightly blistered from holy stone, one of the younger priests sidles up beside you. He leans in and says, "Tomorrow, you'll learn how many gods it takes to guard one corn kernel." Then he winks, which is either comforting or deeply ominous. Welcome to the Aztec year. Hope you like corn. You're going to be seeing a lot of it. Sacred kernels. You wake the next morning to the soft rattle of maize husks in the breeze and the not-so-soft sound of a priest trying to get you to chew on raw corn as breakfast. It's not great. It's not even breakfast, really. But here, corn isn't just a food, it's a deity. A lifeline. A walking myth with silk hair and golden skin. And, as you're discovering, a perfectly reasonable substitute for conversation. Someone asks how you slept. And another replies, like a seed in fertile soil. That's the level of metaphor we're dealing with today. You follow the rust-red path toward a smaller temple nestled between fields, where a priest is reciting, no, chanting, a creation myth. And not just any story, but the Aztec origin myth. How the gods fashioned humanity from maize. Not clay. Not divine breath. Nope. Cornmeal. The spiritual equivalent of saying, God made you out of nachos. But somehow, it's beautiful. According to this tale, after several failed prototypes, wood people, fire people, one extremely emotional batch made from cloud tears, the gods finally mixed ground maize with divine blood and created humans. Corn, in this world, is quite literally your ancestor. Which makes every tortilla kind of a family reunion. You're handed another kernel. This one is darker, almost obsidian black, and wrapped in woven grass. The priest tells you it's used in newborn blessings and funeral rites. It's planted into the soil with the body. And the hope is that in the next world, that corn becomes a path. Not a snack, not a farm yield, a pathway through the afterlife. Chew on that next time you eat popcorn. And here's your mainstream history bite. Maize wasn't just important, it was central. It sustained the population, shaped rituals, and dominated agriculture across Mesoamerica for thousands of years. The Aztecs didn't invent it, but they definitely elevated it to VIP status. It was grown, stored, sacrificed, sung about, painted on walls, and carried in pockets like a good luck charm. You get the feeling that if corn had Instagram, it'd have 1 million followers and a sponsored robe line. A priest invites you into a low, smoky building where bundles of dried corn hang from the beams. He points to the arrangement, 4 varieties, braided in a circle. The maize wheel, he says. Each color represents not just a direction, but a season, a type of soul, a mood. You nod respectfully, though you're silently assigning Hogwarts houses to each ear. Black maize? Totally Slytherin. They sit you down and roll out a reed mat covered in strange glyphs. Little drawings of corn cobs with faces, limbs, feathers. Each one is a god. Each one has a personality. Chikomikawatl is the goddess of nourishment. She's basically the patron saint of well-balanced diets. Sintiatl, the god of young maize, has a more tragic flavor. He's sometimes depicted as being dismembered so his pieces could become different plants. You know, light-hearted gardening themes. The priest taps one image, then looks at you. This one eats time. He's pointing at a corn god you haven't seen yet, half skeletal, half blooming, all unsettling. You're not sure if this is literal, symbolic, or a warning about breakfast options. Here's your quirky fact of the hour. The Aztecs believed corn heard. That's why you never yelled in the fields. That's why offerings were whispered, not shouted. Some sources suggest they sang to the maize, not out of sentiment, but because it was considered alive, sensitive, full of divine gossip, a jealous field, they believed, would produce bitter, twisted kernels. Makes you rethink those passive-aggressive houseplants back home. Historians still argue. The priest says, "Wait. What? He's speaking English now? No. You just dozed off a second and your brain filled in the gaps." What he actually says is that scholars still debate whether the deification of maize began with the Aztecs or if they inherited it fully formed from earlier cultures like the Olmecs or Maya. The archaeological evidence is chewy. Like your corn breakfast. You follow a row of ceremonial stones out to the edge of the field, where children are playing some kind of maize hopscotch. Each square has a glyph. One priest explains that children use these games to learn time, direction, even moral lessons. Step on the wrong kernel? Boom. 5 days of bad luck and no tamales. The stakes are high. By now, your hands are stained with pollen and your skin smells vaguely of roasted masa. The sun climbs higher, and a priest leads you to a small altar. On it sits a bowl of milky corn drink, atole. You sip. It's sweet, grainy, oddly comforting, like drinking a bedtime story. The priest smiles and mutters something that loosely translates to, "You've just swallowed tomorrow." Because to the Aztecs, corn wasn't just the food of today. It was a promise of the future. Each kernel planted was a vow that the world would keep turning, that the gods would stay fed, that the people would rise with the sun and go to sleep under stars. Full of warmth and grain, your hand drifts toward your satchel. There's still that first dried corn from the sunrise. Nestled safely inside, you run your fingers over it and feel, just faintly, the smooth pulse of a civilization that once counted not hours, but harvests. And as you lie down beneath a woven corn canopy, don't ask. They just appear. You hear the hum again. That low, sacred drone of the priesthood, repeating stories in a cadence so ancient, it makes your bones feel older than your body. You fall asleep to the rhythm of kernels in a wooden bowl. Being counted, not eaten, not stored, counted, because tonight, even dreams follow the calendar. And every dream begins with corn. Planting the year. You wake to the earthy scent of tilled soil and the rhythmic thump of wooden digging sticks tapping the ground. Not to plant, not quite yet. What you're witnessing now is far stranger. Priests probing the dirt. Not for seeds, but for time. They call it planting the year. A priest crouches beside you, sleeves rolled up, his hands stained with reddish clay. He presses 2 fingers into a patch of earth, then tilts his head like he's listening for a heartbeat. He murmurs something, then stands. "Too early," he says, brushing off his hands. "Time isn't ready yet." That sentence makes no sense, and also, somehow, all the sense in the world. You follow him as he walks a slow spiral through the temple's sacred field. You count your steps, trying to match his, 23, 24, and stop. He bends and pokes the dirt again. Then he reaches into his satchel and pulls out what looks like a potato wearing feathers. Nope, it's a dried maize doll, complete with tiny glyphs carved into its belly. He plants it, right there, smack in the middle of nowhere. This is not farming. This is astronomy meets faith meets very patient mud work. He explains. This patch of soil lines up with a specific horizon marker where the sun will rise on the first day of the agricultural cycle. It's a solar alignment point, tracked not with telescopes, but with corn, bones, shadows, and memory. And here's your mainstream historical note for the day. Aztec priests, along with many Mesoamerican cultures, calibrated their agricultural calendar based on solar zenith points and seasonal changes. Observed carefully from sacred architecture and field markers. Forget sundials. These people built entire cities to track time by watching how light hits stone and soil. You sit cross-legged in the dirt as the priest draws a spiral with his finger. Surrounded by 4 dots, each one representing a season, a cardinal direction, and a deity. Time begins here, he says, not in clocks, in dirt. He pats the ground like it's a sacred drum. You try it, doesn't feel like a drum, feels like dirt, but he nods approvingly. Another priest joins, carrying a shallow bowl of water. He pours it slowly over a carved stone basin nearby. As the water settles, the sun reflects off its surface, angled just so. The resulting shimmer lands on the maze doll's head. It's begun. One whispers. The year has been marked. This is your quirky tidbit. Aztec priests used reflective surfaces, like still water or polished obsidian, to mark celestial alignments. Think of it as low-tech laser shows from the gods, but much less blinding, and 100% corn-themed. From behind you, a young acolyte pipes up. Historians still argue whether these alignments were fixed or shifted slightly each year, depending on celestial observations or omens. His voice cracks slightly, and another priest tousles his hair. It's kind of adorable, if you overlook the skull necklace. The older priest continues. Corn doesn't ask for permission. It asks for rhythm. He shows you a thick reed scroll, carefully painted with cycles of planting, rainfall patterns, and ceremonial timings. You spot a glyph of a turtle carrying a stalk of maize. That's the slow year, he says. When the rains come late, the turtle tells us to wait. And yes, turtles were calendar metaphors. Because why not? You help him unroll the scroll further. It's divided into nested circles, each one labeled with odd but compelling titles. Fire Wind Day, Bone Flower Time, Fifth Sun Shadow. These aren't weather forecasts. These are moments. Epics. The names make you feel like you've walked into a prophecy novel or a metal band's demo album. Then something peculiar happens. A nearby child drops a small red kernel. The nearest priest gasps like someone just yelled spoilers at a movie theater. He picks up the kernel and studies its angle. Yes. Angle. Where it fell. How it landed. Its direction. North. He says. This year begins with dryness. Apparently, even clumsy kids accidentally become weather prophets. You're led next to a small clay oven, still warm from yesterday's rituals. A priest carefully places a few kernels inside, watches how they pop, then squints, pops slow. Good sign. The earth is thirsty, but not angry. This, he insists, is a scientific method. You're not sure what kind of science, but the results smell delicious. By now, the field is marked with dozens of little maize dolls, all facing various directions. You try to remember which one's east. No chance. But the priests? They know. Every ear of corn, every planting furrow, every muddy toe mark is part of the script. A choreography between humans and earth. One priest turns to you and grins. You want to know the real trick? He kneels and gestures you close. We don't plant seeds to grow corn. He taps his temple. We plant them, to remember time. You stare at the field again. It looks like farming, but now it feels like writing. Like a giant, living calendar, written not in ink, but in roots. You sit back on the warm dirt, fingers trailing the lines in the soil. Somewhere, birds trill. The wind carries the smell of sun-warmed husks and smoke. And just for a moment, it all makes sense. Not because you understand it, but because you can feel its rhythm. And beneath you, the earth hums its quiet approval. 13 heavens, 20 days. You're led away from the dirt field, now full of planted maize dolls that look like someone held a very strange family reunion, and into a shaded courtyard tiled with volcanic stone. There's a low altar here, and a priest is arranging colored beans into a grid. Beans. He's dead serious about it. 2 red ones, white ones, yellow, black. A few roll off. He flicks them back without blinking. These, he tells you, are the bones of the calendar. You blink. Okay. He continues. 13 heavens above, 9 underworlds below. But here, in the middle, is the land of people, and we walk through it in 20-day steps. Welcome to one of the most mesmerizing patterns you've ever seen. The heart of the Tonalpohualli. The sacred Aztec calendar. It's not based on the moon or the sun. Not exactly. It's a cycle of 260 days, 13 numbers, cycling with 20-day signs. So day 1 starts with 1 crocodile, then 2 wind, 3 house, and so on, wrapping around in a loop like a cosmic Rubik's cube. When they reset together, that's your birthday, your fate, and probably your haircut date. The priest draws the first day glyph, Sapakli. The crocodile, big teeth, looks hungry. This is the start, he says. Creation swims out of the waters. You nod slowly, remembering your own personal motto. Everything sounds cooler when a crocodile is involved. Each day sign carries its own energy, personality, and godly supervisor. Wind is clever. House is protective. Death, well, you can guess. Your priest guide hands you a folded bark paper codex and helps you locate your birth sign in the system. You land on 7 lizard. He pauses. Trickster. Fertile. Can't sit still. You shrug. Accurate. Mainstream history no time. The Tonalpohualli wasn't just used by the Aztecs. It had roots far earlier. Seen in Zapotec and Maya cultures. And it governed daily ritual, agricultural rhythms, even military planning. You didn't sneeze without checking your day sign. If you did sneeze, well, hopefully it was on a lucky day. Or someone might bury you in cornflour just to be safe. You notice the priest has started stacking the beans again. This time in rows. He's explaining the 13 heavens, each one layered, each ruled by its own deity. At the very top sits Ometeotl, dual-gendered, timeless, the god of duality. Basically, the universe is both and answer to everything. Beneath your feet, the priest stomps once. 9 below. That's where Mictlantecutli rules. You flinch slightly. You've seen the murals. He's the god of death, with a skeletal jaw and eyeballs that look like they've seen your browser history. Friendly guy. Here comes your quirky fact. The Tonalpohualli wasn't just theoretical. There were entire calendar priests, Tonalpukyu, whose job was to memorize every single combination. Every god pairing, every taboo. No spreadsheets, no whiteboards, just pure brain, and sometimes painted rocks. A younger acolyte leans in and whispers. Historians still argue if the calendar was used more for scheduling rituals or for social control. And yeah, when you've got 260 reasons not to do laundry on a Tuesday, you can basically control everything. The priest continues laying out the calendar days like dominoes. Each day is a stair. He says, walk carelessly, and you stumble into someone else's fate. That sounds poetic, until you realize he might mean it literally. Aztec records tell of children being renamed, warriors refusing battle, and marriages being cancelled just because the day sign clashed. Talk about blaming it on the calendar. You trace your finger over the grid. The pattern repeats endlessly. 13 and 20. Like 2 gears grinding the sky forward. Click by click. The numbers never stop. The priest says, even if you do, you're not sure whether that's a comfort or a threat. Probably both. In one corner of the courtyard, there's a small fire pit surrounded by 20 painted stones, each with a glyph. Every 20 days, a new Tricina, that's a 13-day week, begins. With its own governing god. They're honored with incense, chants, and sometimes slightly alarming puppets. You look closer. One puppet has the face of a jaguar and the arms of a cornstalk. You decide not to ask. You ask the priest what happens if you just ignore the calendar. Ignore it? He chuckles. You can ignore fire too. Until it burns your house. Which is fair, but also sounds like something a calendar salesman might say. Still, it's hard to argue when everything around you, the rituals, the timing, even the food offerings, seems perfectly choreographed to this divine math. You're handed a stone, flat and smooth. You're told to carve your day sign into it. You awkwardly scrape a wobbly lizard and a number 7. The priest squints. Well, maybe it's abstract. He smiles anyway. You're invited to place the stone in a growing ring of other stones, forming a kind of cosmic seating chart. It's beautiful, and just a little overwhelming. As the sun tilts toward late afternoon, long shadows stretch across the calendar grid. A final handful of beans is dropped into the center. The priest closes the codex. That's enough time for today. He says, we'll pick up again tomorrow. Probably on a jaguar day. Or wind, unless the gods change their minds again. You rise slowly, the numbers dancing behind your eyelids. Each glyph lingering like a dream half remembered. The pattern doesn't fade. It loops. It pulses. It waits. Because in the Aztec world, time doesn't pass. It circles. The 260-day pulse. You're starting to get the hang of things. You've stopped flinching every time a priest hands you a corn husk with mysterious glyphs. You've also accepted that every footstep you take is probably occurring on a day specifically designed for something like confronting your fears, or sacrificing frogs to appease the volcano. You've learned not to ask. You just nod and walk in rhythm. Today, you're pulled into the heart of the temple complex, where the priests are preparing the ritual calendar chamber. And yes, it has a name, several names, actually, but everyone just calls it the room where time breathes, which is both majestic and vaguely unsettling. The room is dim, smoky, and filled with humming, low, continuous. You realize it's the same note being chanted by 6 different priests at slightly different pitches. The effect? You feel like you're standing inside a sleeping dragon's throat. In the center lies the Tonalpahuali wheel, 260-day signs arranged like petals on a cosmic flower. One by one, they begin turning small wooden blocks, each carved with a glyph and a number. One priest flicks a kernel of corn into the bowl for each turn. Click, drop, click, drop. It sounds like a heartbeat. This is your mainstream history hit. The 260-day Tonalpahuali calendar was used not just by the Aztecs, but across Mesoamerica, long before their empire rose. Scholars have speculated that 260 days might align with the average human gestation period, making this a calendar of life itself. A fetal clock. You try not to imagine a nursery painted in maize murals and birth glyphs. Too late. A priest leans toward you, offering a riddle. If the year has 365 days, and our sacred count has 260, when do they meet? You don't answer fast enough. He grins. Every 52 years. And when that happens, the world gets nervous. Because here's the catch. The Aztecs believed that when the 260-day sacred calendar and the 365-day solar calendar realigned every 52 years, the universe hung in the balance. Fires were extinguished. Food offerings multiplied. People stopped eating for a hot minute and stared at the stars, waiting to see if the sun would rise again. No pressure. You're invited to participate in a mock new fire ceremony. It's not the real deal. They're saving that for the actual 52-year cycle, but it's close enough to make your palms sweat. You stand in darkness. All fires are extinguished. No torches, no coals, not even an awkward spark. Silence. Then, a priest with a flint blade lights a fire in a fresh chest cavity of a pumpkin. Relax. It's symbolic and seasonally appropriate. Here's your quirky tidbit. The Tonalpahuali determined not just days, but personality. Want to know your job, your marriage fate, your odds of surviving a jaguar attack? Check your day sign. You were born on 8 Flint? A priest might ask. Oof. Avoid boats and people named after animals. You peer at a woven calendar mat where priests sit cross-legged, each assigned to a different deity. They chant the meanings of the days in looping rhythm. 1 crocodile. Beginnings. 2 wind. Movement. 3 house. Family. 4 lizard. Renewal. Each sign dances with meaning. You begin to see how this wasn't just a clock. It was a language of reality. One priest turns to you. Historians still argue whether the calendar was based on astronomical patterns, agricultural rhythms, or human biology. He shrugs. Probably all 3. Maybe it's not meant to be sorted. You sit in a corner and try to follow the sequence. It's mesmerizing. Every 13 days, the number cycle resets. Every 20 days, the sign cycle does. But together, they interlock like cogs. Never the same combination twice until the full 260-day circuit completes. You realize it's not linear. It's spiral. Like breath. Like seasons. Like dreams that end where they began. Suddenly, a priest claps. The chanting stops. Everyone looks up. Day 5 read. He announces. A good day for beginnings. Long journeys. And washing your feet. Not necessarily in that order. He hands you a small stone amulet carved with the reed glyph. Keep this, he says, so you don't forget where you started. You nod, even though you've forgotten what day it is. Again, as the sun arcs outside, you realize no one's looked at a sundial all day. Time here doesn't tick, it breathes. It pulses in 260-beat loops. You begin to think of the calendar less as a measuring stick and more like a drum, a divine rhythm that you step into and learn to follow. That night, you lie under the stars, tracing invisible spirals with your finger in the air. You whisper your birth sign to yourself like a lullaby. And in the distance, you swear you hear corn leaves rustling in perfect time. Sky mapping with tortillas. You wake to the smell of burning masa. Not burnt food, not breakfast, but actual tortillas, charred intentionally, laid out on obsidian slabs like edible star charts. That's right. Today, you're learning astronomy with snacks. The priest greets you with a calm nod and a flat cake of corn. He waves a hand over its surface as if it's a map. The stars speak, he says, but they do not shout. So we bake their messages. You squint. It looks like a slightly crispy tortilla. Then he points. There's a tiny indentation. Just off-center. Venus, he says. Another burnt speck near the edge. The Pleiades. You're not sure what's more impressive, that he sees constellations in breakfast, or that you're starting to believe him. This isn't some fringe village hobby. It's your mainstream history fix of the day. The Aztecs used Venus as a celestial cornerstone, observing its morning and evening cycles with stunning precision. Venus dictated planting, war, ritual, and sacrifice days. It had its own calendar, the Venus table, woven into codices like the Codex Borgia and Codex Bourbonicus. And no surprise, Venus was often associated with Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent deity who had a flair for the dramatic and a knack for descending from the heavens at just the right moment. You're shown a polished obsidian disc. It reflects the sky, sort of. With the right angle, you see a faint double image of the clouds and, oddly, the tortilla. The priest chuckles. That is the sky remembering its own reflection. Poetic, slightly mystical, and possibly a metaphor for indigestion. Now comes the part where you help. A young apprentice hands you a fresh tortilla, warm and pliable, and asks you to mark the year's first star path. No pressure. You reach for a burnt twig and poke gently. He winces. That was the stomach of the sky. You apologize. He's mostly joking. Mostly. Your quirky tidbit today? There's evidence that some Aztec astronomers used edible models, cakes, tortillas, maize dough, to teach students about the movement of celestial bodies. It was hands-on learning in the most literal sense. Astronomy class. But you could eat your homework. Meanwhile, the priests begin reciting the four lights chant, a poetic naming of the stars used for planting days, battles, and prayers. When the firestar rises, one murmurs. The obsidian sun opens its eye. That's code for a seasonal shift. But it sounds way cooler in Nahuatl. A larger mat is unrolled, painted with 20 circles, one for each day sign. The priests place small kernels on them, then tilt the mat slightly, watching which roll toward the edge. Gravity is a priest, one says. He pulls time in directions we must guess. You're not entirely convinced this is scientific, but the kernels land very consistently. Over lunch, you guessed it. More maize, the talk turns to eclipses. The priests warn you, never eat during one. The sun and moon fight. They say, to chew during their struggle is to disrespect their war. You file this away next to other excellent life advice. Like, don't wear feathers in the rain, and only dance if the corn agrees. Historians still argue. The elder priest adds between bites of blue corn tamale. Whether these rituals were symbolic astronomy or true empirical tracking. He pauses. But what's the difference? If the rains arrive when we ask, you glance at the sky. Wisps of cloud drift lazily across the sun. A priest lays out 3 tortillas in a row, each scorched with glyphs. He traces a line through them with his fingertip. This was the comet of the third fire. We baked it the day it passed. You're about to ask how they knew it was coming. He shrugs. Dreams, birds, cracked mirrors, and stomach aches. The signs are everywhere. You're handed a codex. Inside are delicate diagrams, star clusters, solar angles, planetary paths, all labeled with maze glyphs. One section includes a curious detail, a diagram of the sky arranged like a cornfield. Rows of stars, stalks bending toward certain constellations, as if the cosmos were just one big, divine garden. It's beautiful, and weirdly, logical. As sunset nears, you're invited to a stargazing hill just beyond the temple. The sky darkens. The air cools. Priests arrange torches in a spiral, pointing toward known celestial alignments. Venus appears, low and bright on the horizon. A collective gasp. They bow. One priest whispers, "When Venus burns bright, the earth listens." The night fills with soft humming. Priests sit in silence, counting beats between stars rising. You watch as one gently places a tortilla on a flat stone, dots it with ash, and folds it carefully. Map completed, he whispers, storing it in a woven pouch. And just like that, you realize, the Aztecs didn't just read the stars. They fed them, reflected them, recorded them in grain and fire. Not separate from the heavens, but in communion with them. As you lie back on the grass, gazing upward, the stars blink slowly, like kernels ripening on a vast black stalk. You close your eyes. You dream of tortillas falling from the sky. And every one lands in perfect alignment. The 365-day roundabout. By now, your internal clock has stopped measuring hours. It ticks in corn kernels, ceremonial chants, and tortilla star maps. Which is why when a priest rouses you before dawn again, you're not even surprised. You're just wondering which calendar this particular day belongs to. Today, the lesson is all about the other calendar, the solar one. The Shopahuali. You say it slowly in your head. Shiupuwali. It rolls off the tongue like a drumbeat in a harvest dance. This is the Aztecs' 365-day calendar. And it has nothing to do with spreadsheets or daylight savings. This is about fire, festivals, and planting your entire life around celestial whispers. The priest guides you to a tall stone column with glyphs spiraling upward like ivy. He taps a square near the bottom. First month, he says, Atlakawalo, watering season, time of cleansing. You squint. The glyph looks like a water droplet with teeth. That checks out. Mainstream history fact for today. The Shopahuali calendar was divided into 18 months of 20 days each. That's 360 days. Then they added a cheeky little 5-day period at the end, called the Nementemi, literally the empty days. Days you didn't want to be born on, marry on, or even sneeze during. It was the annual equivalent of, just stay inside. The priest laughs. The Nementemi are when time sleeps with one eye open. He means it's dangerous. The gods are less attentive. Mischief leaks into the world. You nod. Every culture has its version of avoid the void. You follow him through the temple courtyard where, lo and behold, a giant sundial rests, carved stone, worn by centuries, but instead of neat hourly markers, it's got faces. Each month has its patron deity, and each one has opinions. There's Tlaloc, the rain god, smiling slightly, probably soaked something important. Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror deity, looks mildly annoyed as usual. And Xochipilli, god of art, dance, and flowers, clearly the life of any divine party. The solar calendar doesn't just track planting. It's also the Aztec festival planner. Every month comes with its own ceremonies, sacrifices, songs, and, naturally, maize-based foods. You're handed a painted scroll showing the 18 months, each with its own name and festival. You point to one. Talakaksapehualistli. Oh, the priest says. That's the flaying of men. You freeze. Don't worry. He adds. We use bread now. Quirky fact time. During one festival, the Aztecs would make a life-size dough sculpture of a god, paint it with edible pigments, and then, very solemnly, eat it. Think divine gingerbread man, but with more corn and existential responsibility. You're led to the festival grounds, not to witness flaying. Thankfully, today's event is Tezostantli, the little vigil. It's a quiet observance, devoted to soil and seeds. Women wear flower garlands. Children carry maize bundles. A priest sings a lullaby to a pile of dirt. It's strangely touching. One acolyte explains that the Shopahuali was also aligned to solar zeniths, points where the sun stands directly overhead. The Aztecs noticed this not with GPS, but by watching how shadows disappeared at midday. When your body casts no shadow, the priest says, you belong to the sky. You try it. Noon arrives. Your shadow shrinks into nothing. You feel translucent. It's like the sun sees right through you. You're told this moment marks an offering, your breath, your presence, a silent nod to the gods who keep the world on its warm, predictable spin. Historians still argue. A priest says, whether the solar calendar was fixed to the stars, the seasons, or simply adjusted by ritual. He lifts a bowl of maize. But we know this, when the corn grows, the calendar is correct. As afternoon unfolds, you help decorate the courtyard with colored maize husks. Each color corresponds to a cardinal direction. North, black; south, red; east, white; west, yellow. Together, they create a cosmic compass, a maize-based GPS. If you will. Nearby, a few priests are carving fire serpents into wood. For the end of the year. Someone says, when the fire is rekindled. You ask if they ever take a break. Of course, a priest replies, we nap during eclipses. You spend the evening watching dancers twirl in loops, one for each month. Their steps mimic seasons: planting, growing, harvesting, resting. It's mesmerizing, a choreography of time. You look up. Venus blinks awake. The priests nod in satisfaction. Everything is where it should be. At last, a final ritual before bed. A single corn kernel is placed atop a flat stone. A priest taps it gently with a stick, making it spin. As it twirls, he whispers, this is your year. May it turn evenly. And somehow, you believe it will. 4 corns, 4 directions. You wake to the sound of rattles, not snakes, but gourds filled with maize kernels, shaken in a gentle, rhythmic dance. They echo around the courtyard as 4 priests slowly circle a central stone. Each one dressed in a different color. Red, white, yellow, black. Each priest represents a direction. Each color represents a corn. And today, you learn that in the Aztec world, the universe is shaped like a cornfield. They sit you in the center, like the eye of a compass made of chanting. Swirling robes. One priest steps forward, his white cloak trailing soft dust behind him. East, he says, where the sun is born, where the white corn grows, where your breath begins. You turn slowly to the others. South is red. A priest with crimson paint across his cheeks lifts a clay flute and plays a short, piercing note. The place of warmth, of fire, of passion. He declares, of red corn, and growing roots. West is black. A solemn woman with jet dark hair raises a shell trumpet and blows a soft, low moan into the air. This is where the sun dies. She says, where black corn carries your thoughts to rest. And then north, yellow. A priest draped in ochre, his forehead marked with golden paint. The place of the cold winds. He whispers, the yellow corn that feeds the bones of ancestors. Mainstream history note. The Aztecs aligned their world, spiritually, physically, cosmically, according to this 4-direction system. It appeared in architecture, art, agriculture, and ritual. Altars were built at the intersection. Cities were designed like celestial grids. Even you were expected to move through the world in harmony with this sacred cross. You're handed a flat stone painted with 4 glyphs. The priest shows you how to turn it in your hand so that each face points to its proper corner of the earth. When the world turns, he says, you stay still. When you turn, the world speaks. You try. You spin the stone slowly. Nothing happens at first. Then the priests begin singing, 4-part harmony, rising like a breeze around you. Their voices weave together, building a rhythm so deep it hums in your ribs. One priest steps forward and places a maize kernel in your palm, yellow, round, warm from the sun. This, he says, is your center. You glance at the bowl they're drawing from. It's filled with 4 types of corn: white, red, yellow, black. Each has its own shape, sheen, scent. You smell earth, ash, sunlight, rain. Somehow, you smell directions. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some Aztec priests used corn colors not just for ritual, but for divination. They'd cast kernels like dice, reading the patterns to answer questions or guide decisions. Want to know if your marriage is blessed? Toss the corn. Want to know if that weird mole is a bad omen? Toss the corn. Want to name your child? Yep, corn. Historians still argue. One priest says as he arranges colored kernels in a spiral, whether this four-color system came from agricultural roots or symbolic cosmology. He shrugs. Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe it's just how maize wanted to be known. You're invited to join a walking meditation. Each direction has its own short path, lined with husks, feathers, and incense burners. You start with east, walking slowly between rows of maize. The sun is rising, warm and clear. The white corn here is tall, alert. Birds sing. You feel light, new. South is next. Red banners flap above you. The air grows warmer, the soil richer. The corn here is thicker, hung with tassels and swaying with unseen rhythm. You smell chili and smoke. You remember something from your childhood, spice, laughter, a moment of joy so sudden it makes your chest ache. Then west. The path darkens, not frightening, just quieter. Leaves rustle like whispers. The black corn glows faintly in the fading light. Here, time feels slower. You see a shadow of yourself in the still water of a basin. You look peaceful. Finally, north. The air cools. The yellow corn is sparse, but firm. This is a place of stillness, of reflection. A priest appears silently beside you and hands you a cloak. This is for remembering, he says. When you return to the center, the four priests bow to you. Together, they plant a small cornstalk in a pot at your feet. This is your journey, they say. It will not grow straight. It will grow wise. As the sun rises higher, the four directions fade gently into the everyday, no longer priests, but farmers again, no longer mystics, just stewards of seed and soil. And yet, the map remains. Because now, you carry it inside you. A compass made of kernels. A heartbeat with four colors. Naming babies by day signs. The morning begins with drums, soft, steady, like footsteps of a god tiptoeing across the clouds. You're led into a shaded dwelling at the edge of the village, where something special is happening. A baby has been born. Not to a king, not to a priest, just a humble farmer's family. But today, this child is the center of the cosmos. A midwife hums as she cradles the newborn, while the priest prepares his tools, not scalpels or clamps, but a painted bowl, bundles of corn, and a dog-eared codex filled with glyphs. You expect chanting, maybe a name. What you don't expect is for the priest to announce, "Today is 3 Monkey. This child will never stop dancing." You blink. There's no list of family names. No, Junior. No, the third. No frantic search for something that sounds good with Cuauhtémoc. No. Here, your birthday is your blueprint. Your name isn't chosen. It's revealed by the calendar. Mainstream historical gem. The Aztecs commonly named babies after the day sign they were born under from the Tonalpohualli calendar. There were 20-day signs in rotation: jaguar, rain, reed, dog, and yes, monkey, and each came with divine implications. Not just personality, but fate. You didn't just have a birthday. You were your birthday. The priest consults a codex again, tracing his finger along intersecting circles, 13 numbers, 20 signs, 3 Monkey. He repeats, ruled by Xochipilli, the god of art, music, mischief. He pauses, eyes twinkling. Also accidents involving fruit. We'll see. He dips his finger in maize flour and dots the baby's forehead. This is your path, he whispers, playful, clever, blessed with rhythm and cursed with curiosity. You lean over and glance at the day's glyph. It really is a monkey, arms raised, 1 foot in the air, as if mid-cartwheel. You immediately sense the child's future: broken pots, improvised songs, and suspiciously giggly silences. The priest reaches into a gourd and scatters tiny black and white kernels onto a woven mat. The pattern they form determines the baby's first ceremonial name. Quicani, he says, the one who sings. It's not permanent, he explains. Later, the child may earn or adopt another. But for now, that's who they are. Quirky tidbit. Some families would consult calendar priests not just on the baby's birth date, but on when to conceive, to ensure a more favorable sign. Want a brave warrior? Aim for 9 jaguar. A skilled healer? Hope for 5 lizard. The whole reproductive calendar became a kind of spiritual Sudoku. The midwife carries the baby outside for the naming offering. A small fire burns in a clay pot. She gently fans the infant with copal smoke. Chanting the 4 directions, the priest plants 4 corn kernels in the ground, white, red, yellow, and black, inviting the gods of space and time to bless the child's journey. As part of the ritual, the baby's umbilical cord is dried and placed in a tiny pouch alongside a corn kernel and a flint shard. These are the child's anchors, life, nourishment, and strength. The pouch will be kept under the sleeping mat to guide dreams. A relative approaches the priest. Worried, she was born during Nementemi, the 5 empty days. The priest raises a hand. True, but also during the hour of wind. That brings balance. He flips his codex to a page covered in spirals and tiny footprints. This child will wander, but wisely. Here's where things get really Aztec. The priest presents a rattle made of dried gourds filled with maize. He shakes it over the baby and listens. Loose kernels, he says, nodding. She'll be a traveler. Her thoughts won't settle. Then he makes a face. Also, probably a terrible sleeper. You chuckle. Relatable. Historians still argue. One priest murmurs as he cleans the tools. How strictly these naming signs were followed. Some say it was sacred law. Others say, flexible suggestion. Especially if your uncle's name was already Jaguar and nobody liked him. As the sun rises higher, more neighbors arrive. Each one brings a gift, maize bread, feathers, a clay figurine. No gift wrap, no bows, just humble blessings. They greet the baby by her day sign, good fortune. Little monkey, may you climb high and fall rarely. Before you leave, the priest invites you to look up your own day sign again. You squint at the codex. 7 lizard, you whisper. The priest taps your nose. You're a fertility sign, he says. Be careful where you plant ideas. Noted. The final step. The baby is held to the sky. The priest chants, this is your star. This is your song. You are 3 monkey, and the world spins because you arrived. You exhale slowly, because somehow, it feels true. Absolutely, you're right to be strict about the word count. Let's expand section 10 to fall within the proper range, 1100 to 1250 words. Here's the fully revised version at the correct length. Blank, underscore, blank. Cornbread and calendrix. It's festival day. You know because someone wakes you up by ringing a bell made from a turtle shell and shouting, Happy Fire Corn Festival, in Nahuatl, which still sounds way too cheerful for sunrise. But the village is buzzing. Smoke curls from cooking fires. Drums thump like lazy thunder. And the air smells like roasted masa, wood smoke, and the sharp bite of burning chili. You're handed a woven apron, a wooden spoon, and one task. Stir the dough, in the pattern of the sky. Right, the pattern of the sky. Which is surprisingly vague. Is that clockwise? Spiral? Star-shaped? You go with a slow, circular swirl and try to look confident. As if you've always known this was the sacred way to prepare festival tamales. The old woman beside you glances over and grunts. You take that as encouragement. Today marks one of the rare convergence festivals, the kind that only happens once every 8 solar years. Most people see it maybe 5 or 6 times in their lifetime. It's when a certain sacred day sign lands squarely on a particular position in the Shopahuali, the 365-day solar calendar. And when it does, the Aztecs throw a party so rooted in time. It's essentially baking the calendar into reality. Mainstream historical note. The Aztecs didn't just track time for farming or astrology. They used it to structure their entire ceremonial life. The solar calendar was divided into 18 months of 20 days each, with 5 extra, empty, days known as Nementemi. Every month had its own festivals and deities, often tied to harvests, warfare, or cosmic events, but every so often, roughly every 8 years, there came a sacred overlap known as the Venus round. This rare rhythm synced parts of the 260-day Tonalpahuali with the 365-day Shopahuali in a way that felt cosmically resonant. To mark the occasion, they celebrated with music, ritual, and, yes, extremely intricate tamales. You're brought to a shaded cooking area where women and priests sit cross-legged, sculpting tamales with sacred intent. These aren't just lunch, they're edible day signs. One priest molds a corn husk into a snarling dog. Another rolls dough into a crude snake. Each tamale represents a symbol in the calendar, a fusion of time, myth, and starch. You join in. You try your hand at shaping a reed glyph tamale. But it ends up looking more like a nervous worm. The woman next to you laughs, then gently reshapes it. Reed must be tall, she says, and straight, like a strong back. You nod solemnly. She hands you another lump of masa. Try again. Some tamales are filled with blue corn and chili, spicy and bold. Others are mild, with honey and squash. Each flavor reflects a day sign's qualities. Jaguar is hot, a priest says, biting into a fiery red tamale. Monkey is sweet. Deer is humble. Wind is unpredictable. He gestures to a tamale that's cracked open like a flower. You realize the meal is a mirror. Its personality, memory, and prophecy, wrapped in husks. Quirky fact of the hour. Aztec codices describe calendrical meals, offerings and communal feasts that corresponded to particular celestial alignments. During certain festivals, whole villages would participate in ritual cooking where every dish was assigned a number and day sign. In some cases, the tamales themselves were even arranged in spirals or laid out like a living calendar. And when they were done, they were eaten with the same reverence you'd give a holy book. As you help carry trays of steaming tamales toward the temple square, you notice the ground has been painted with glyphs in maize flour. 20 glyphs, for the 20-day signs. Each is encircled by flower petals. And at the center of the ring burns a ceremonial fire. Here comes the math. A priest explains, every 8th solar year, this sacred day sign returns to this spot in the calendar. We mark it with fire. We honor it with maize. He gestures to the center. Today is one rabbit. Venus rises in the east. The cycle renews. You can feel it, that odd gravity of time aligning. The way everything seems to pulse and sync. Drummers start beating slowly, steadily. Not a war rhythm, a breathing rhythm. Historians still argue. A nearby priest says over his shoulder, whether these calendar festivals were entirely fixed or adjusted by omens, signs, and crop success. He shrugs. Sometimes the gods tell us. Sometimes the corn does. The food is carried in ceremonial procession around the fire. 4 elders, one for each cardinal direction, hold high their platters, white, red, yellow, and black tamales. Each color aligns with a direction, a deity, a mood. They circle the flames, calling out the months. Atlakawalo, one cries. Tazostantly, Hui Tekulutal. You don't know what they all mean, but the names ring out like bells. Then, each elder places a tamale into the fire. The scent rises, roasted corn, burnt ash, a sweetness you can't quite name. It's like you're inhaling something ancient, something holy. One priest drops in a tamale shaped like a monkey. For laughter, he says. Another adds one shaped like a skull. For remembering. Then, a young girl runs up to you and places a wrapped bundle in your hand. This one's yours, she says. You open it to find a small tamale stamped with your day sign, 7 lizard. Inside is a mix of squash, amaranth seeds, and something faintly floral. She grins. Eat it when you need strength. Or when you feel your feet going somewhere they shouldn't. It's oddly specific. As dusk falls, the last tamales are eaten. The fire glows low. Someone starts playing a flute made from bone and maize stalk. The melody twists into the air like smoke. Around you, people are full, not just in the stomach, but in spirit, fed by something deeper than food. And here's your big realization. The Aztecs didn't just mark time on paper or stone. They cooked it. They kneaded it into dough. They steamed it into meaning. In their world, calendars weren't abstract tools, they were flavors, rituals, recipes. Time was something you could taste. You lie back, chewing slowly, watching sparks drift upward like burning glyphs. The stars blink on, one by one. Venus shines brightest of all. And just before you drift off, you whisper to no one in particular. I wonder what tomorrow tastes like. Tattoos of time. This morning, you wake to the sound of scraping. Not stone on stone, but bone on skin, delicate, rhythmic, almost like the whisper of a quill across parchment. You follow the sound to a side room near the temple courtyard, where a group of priests and apprentices sit quietly. One of them has his robe pulled down to the waist, revealing a back covered in inked glyphs, spiraling from shoulder blade to spine like vines of prophecy. Welcome to the Aztec tattoo chamber, where time leaves a mark you don't wash off. A priest motions for you to sit. You've tasted our calendar, he says. You've walked it, you've eaten it. Now, you'll see how it lives beneath the skin. He nods toward the tattooed man. Every mark is a memory. Every glyph, a passage. You lean closer, careful not to intrude. The tattoos aren't decorative. They're calendrical records, each symbol a day sign, a festival, a sacrifice, a vision. The spine forms the central axis, 13 vertebrae marked with the 13 numbers of the sacred Tonalpahuali. Branching from that are the 20-day signs, arranged not in order, but by personal events. Mainstream historical insight. While full-body tattooing isn't as prominently documented among the Aztecs as it was in some Polynesian or Andean cultures, there is strong evidence that elite warriors and ritual priests wore body art tied to calendar events, particularly linked to life milestones and religious festivals. These markings were not random. They were biographical, etched timelines that made your body a walking codex. The man leans forward and lets you trace the symbol for one read. It's etched into his left shoulder, coiled like a wind-blown stalk. That was the year I became a priest, he says. Venus rose in the east that day. I was 15. I remember the heat. Another priest shows you his forearm. 5-day signs are inked along it. Death, water, monkey, jaguar, flower. Those are my children, he explains, each one born under that sign. When I forget how to speak to them, I look here. He chuckles. Monkey laughs at everything. Quirky tidbit? The ink used was often mixed with ground charcoal, crushed obsidian, and, yep, pulverized corn husks. Maize. Again. Because of course even the ink had to be time-stamped by the gods. You ask how it's done. They show you. A sharpened cactus spine, dipped in ink, tapped gently but relentlessly into the skin. No numbing herbs. No distraction. You don't tattoo the body, the artist says. You tattoo the memory. You watch as a young apprentice receives his first mark. It's a small glyph, 8 rabbit, right below the collarbone. He winces, but stays still. That was the day of his initiation. And now, it will travel with him always. The priest beside you lifts his sleeve to reveal an entire forearm filled with symbols arranged like crop rows. This is my calendar, he says. Each festival, each loss, each vision I've ever had. I only add to it when the maze tells me to. He smiles and rolls his sleeve back down. You're asked if you want one. You hesitate. Permanent ink in an unfamiliar time system? But they offer a safe compromise, paint. A temporary symbol, done in traditional dye, to wear for the day. You pick 7 Lizard, your old friend. They paint it on your wrist in a twisting pattern, curling it around the bone like a secret spiral. The priest nods. That one moves when it sleeps. It's a restless dreamer. You walk through the courtyard and begin to see it everywhere. Inked arms, painted cheeks, glyphs stitched into robes, scratched into wood, woven into belts. The Aztecs didn't just read the calendar. They wore it. They carried it into battle, into childbirth, into sleep. Historians still argue. One priest says as he oils the spine of a new tattoo needle, whether these markings were official, ceremonial, or personal. But we say, when time touches you, you must show the mark. In one corner of the temple sits an older man with near black skin and silver-white hair. His entire chest is inked with a scene, sun, maze, skulls, birds, and stars. That's the entire cycle of the Tonalpahuali. Someone whispers. He's walked it 3 times. You realize they don't mean metaphorically. The man is over 70. He's lived through 3 full Venus rounds. That's 156 years of intersecting calendars. You're invited to attend the Night of Remembrance, A quiet ritual where people paint or recall symbols they've seen in dreams. Some dreams are messages. A priest explains. Some are warnings. Others are lost days returning. Each person offers their glyph to the fire. Or tattoos it for safekeeping. One man paints a flaming skull. Another draws a maize stalk with wings. A woman traces a spiral inside a jaguar's paw. A child paints a turtle with flowers growing from its shell. You think it's just doodling. Until a priest looks and says, "That's a rare day sign. We haven't seen that in 17 cycles." You find yourself wondering, what if we all wore our calendars? If your skin carried your story, how differently would you live? At the end of the ritual, a priest approaches and wipes away the paint on your wrist. This symbol is never gone. He says softly, even if you can't see it, the day walks with you. You step into the night air. Wrist tingling. Overhead, Venus blinks again, bright and knowing. And beneath your skin, you carry time like a whisper. Leap years and smoking mirrors. Today, you wake up to an unusual sight. A priest balancing a bowl of fire on his head. He's not performing a trick or launching a career as a spiritual waiter. This is a ceremony of adjustment. The kind the Aztecs turned to when things got wonky. You know how we leap a day every 4 years to keep our calendars on track? Well, the Aztecs had their own way of fixing drift. Except instead of spreadsheets and equations, they relied on omens, star charts, and the occasional smoking mirror. This morning's ritual is all about recalibration. You follow a trail of black stones to a circular altar inlaid with obsidian shards. Around it, 4 priests stand still as statues. Their faces painted half white, half black. Each holds a reflective mirror made of polished volcanic glass. And at the center sits the high priest, muttering under his breath as he carefully lines up maize kernels into a spiral. Today is the day they ask the gods, are we still on time? Mainstream historical fact, the Aztecs, like many Mesoamerican cultures, did not use a leap day or leap year in the modern sense. Instead, they employed observational corrections, relying on the position of the sun, the behavior of Venus, or unusual phenomena like droughts, eclipses, or locust swarms. Priests would consult codices, dream omens, and celestial alignments to determine whether a realignment was necessary. You ask what happens if the calendars fall too far out of sync. Chaos, says one priest without blinking. Floods, drought, children born sideways. Okay then, they call today a mirror day, one of the few times in the year when the sun and Venus appear in certain positions, allowing the priests to scry the future by looking backward. How do you look backward through a mirror? With practice, apparently, and patience. You're handed a small piece of obsidian polished to a gleam. It's heavy, cold, and oddly comforting. You stare into it. At first, you just see your own sleepy face. Then, as smoke from nearby incense begins to curl across the surface, you start to see images flicker. Not visions, just memories. A cracked tortilla, a child's laugh, a field of black corn swaying in slow motion. You blink and it's gone. The high priest announces that the maize shadow fell slightly too far west today. That means time is leaning. Ever so slightly. It's not a full drift. He says, but we must rebalance. He raises a staff carved with all 20-day signs and spins it slowly. Wherever it lands, the adjustment will be made. Quirky fact. Aztec priests sometimes used randomized divination tools, like spinning staffs, tossed corn, or even animal entrails, to make adjustments to the calendar. Not because they didn't understand astronomy, they did, but because they believed the gods could only be consulted through symbolic randomness. Logic got you so far. Luck took you the rest of the way. The staff clacks to a stop. For Flint. Everyone murmurs. Apparently, that's a day ruled by the smoking mirror himself, Tezcatlipoca, god of illusion, memory, and chaos. Also, god of, well, mirrors. Historians still argue, says a nearby acolyte, whether these corrections were based on strict observation or divine interpretation. Some scholars believe they added or delayed entire festivals to match the sky. Others think it was more political. You look at the priest with the fire bowl again. He finally removes it from his head, carefully setting it beside a square of maize cakes arranged to look like stars. He claps twice, and the crowd falls silent. He announces that one day will be held this cycle. Not erased, not skipped, just held, suspended between festivals. A day for reflection, a time to breathe. This isn't the only way they manage celestial misalignment. You're told of another method, more secret, more dramatic. In rare cases, the priests would call for a year of darkness. A pause in celebration, a pulling inward, kind of like turning off the world to reboot it. You ask if that's ever happened recently. The priest nods slowly. Last time was 52 years ago. The sun took longer to rise. We thought, maybe it was over. You shiver slightly. Then comes the ritual of feeding the drift. It's surprisingly adorable. Small tamales shaped like turtles and stars are thrown into the fire. Children carry miniature sun discs painted with gold and ash. The idea is to satisfy the hunger of the lagging time. You must never let the calendar go hungry. A priest whispers, or it starts eating your luck. You assist in placing offerings along the temple's shadow line, an actual physical groove carved into the floor that aligns with the sun at certain times of year. This line moves, you're told, not because it bends, but because the world forgets its rhythm. That's hauntingly poetic. The high priest dips his fingers into black pigment made of charcoal and crushed obsidian. He draws a spiral on your palm. This is the adjustment point. He says, you are now marked with the moment the year bent. You wonder how long it will stay. He smiles, as long as you remember it. By sundown, the mirrors are covered, the obsidian discs stacked away, and the calendar reset, subtly. No dates change, no days renamed, but now everyone walks a little straighter. Like they've nudged the universe back into place. As a final gesture, a priest sets a single maize kernel on the ground and lights a small wick beside it. The flame dances, flickers, then dies. The day has shifted, he announces. You return to your mat under a sky clearer than usual. Stars crisp like flakes of ice. Venus hangs low and steady. The moon is thin, sharp. Everything feels aligned. You press your palm to the earth and whisper your day sign. Just in case the calendar is still listening. And far away, somewhere in the darkness, you imagine a mirror turning. Quietly, correcting the world. Priesthood exam. Corn edition. This morning starts with a riddle. A priest leans over your mat as you're trying to chew through a breakfast of fire-roasted maize and cactus honey. What walks on 4 stalks in spring? Carries a knife in summer, dances in autumn, and buries you in winter? You stare at him, blinking. It's corn, he says, laughing. Obviously. Of course it is. Today's agenda? You're joining a priestly training session. Which sounds fancy, until you realize it's mostly a group of teens squatting in a dusty circle around a pile of corn husks. Taking turns failing pop quizzes about maize deities. It's the Aztec version of school. And it's both serious and surprisingly hilarious. The instructor, a hawk-eyed priest named Latoani, commands silence with a single clap. Today, he declares, we review sacred knowledge, gods, glyphs, cycles, and how not to confuse your Xilanen with your Chikomikawatl. Again, a boy 2 mats down from you groans. Apparently, he's made that mistake before. Several times. Mainstream history check. Aztec priests, especially those focused on the calendar, underwent rigorous training, memorizing day signs, month festivals, deity roles, astronomy alignments, and appropriate offerings. Some began as young as 6, often training in Kameka schools run by temple elders. These weren't just scholarly institutions, they were spiritual laboratories, where even a mispronounced prayer could mean metaphysical disaster. You're handed a thin strip of bark paper covered in glyphs. Your task? Match each one to the correct corn deity. Sounds simple, until you realize how many of them look like maize, but with subtle, ominous accessories. One has a snake wrapped around it. Another is holding a severed hand. One seems to be weeping into a tortilla. First up is Sintiatl, god of young maize. Gentle, abundant, a little tragic. He sacrifices himself. Latoani explains, so we can eat. You point at a glyph of a smiling corn stalk with roots like hands reaching down. Correct. Next, Chikomikawatl, the female maize spirit. Fertility, harvest, plenty. Also wields 7 serpents and shows up in dreams where all your teeth fall out. You guess correctly again. The instructor raises an eyebrow. You feel momentarily clever. And then he throws a curveball. Who governs the second Tricina after the corn moon? Under a waning Venus? You panic. You blurt out. The one with feathers? The priest cackles. You just credited Itzpapalatl, the obsidian butterfly goddess, as ruler of corn. She thanks you, but advises you never plant anything again. Everyone laughs. Even the strict old woman sweeping the courtyard snorts into her broom. Here's your quirky fact. While the Aztecs revered maize deities, they overlapped in chaotic, poetic, and sometimes baffling ways. Some gods were hybrid, others appeared only in dreams, and a few changed personalities depending on the direction of the wind or the number of turtle shells in an offering bowl. Keeping them straight wasn't just a challenge, it was a spiritual responsibility. Now it's time for the physical portion of your exam, calendar call-outs. The instructor shouts a day sign and number, and students must instantly name its corresponding ruling god, favorable omen, forbidden activity, and associated maize color. It's a bit like Jeopardy, but if you answer too slow, you get hit with a tamale. He yells, 10 crocodile. A girl shouts, Tanakatakutli, creation, do not build boats. Black corn, 8 wind, Ihaquatl, movement, do not dig holes. White corn, free lizard, you freeze. That's your sign. You stammer. Mayaquel? No. Wait, Xochipilli? A tamale hits you square in the chest. Soft, thankfully. Chalchutotalan, the priest says smugly. The jade turkey, bringer of temptation. No singing near sacred fires. You nod solemnly, making a mental note to never sing near a sacred fire again. Or near any fire. Or any turkey. Historians still argue. The instructor says during a break, whether these teachings were purely mnemonic or rooted in experiential truth. Did gods change behavior by day? Or did memory make it so? He shrugs. What matters is that we remember, even if it means confusing our serpents occasionally. Later, you're brought to a field just outside the temple. Each student is handed a dried maize stalk with 3 kernels still attached. Time quiz, says the priest. Place the stalk on the ground. Tell us what season it represents, what sign it aligns with, and what offering would please the gods on a bad harvest year. The answers range wildly from blood and beans to singing into the rain until the ducks applaud. You're pretty sure at least 2 kids are just making things up. The priest lets it slide, creativity counts. As the sun rises higher, the session moves indoors to the codex room. This is the real heart of training. A long, narrow space filled with bark paper scrolls, maize-colored ink pots, and symbols so dense they look like music composed by moonlight. You're allowed to unroll one. Gently, it crackles softly in your hands. The glyphs tell the story of a year-long drought and the rituals performed to wake the maize gods. There's a glyph of a priest standing in water up to his neck, holding corn above his head. Another of children scattering ashes into the wind. Another of a single kernel drawn the size of the sun. The final test of the day is philosophical. What is the difference? Latoani asks. Between maize and memory? You sit in silence with the others. Finally, a girl says, maize feeds the body. Memory feeds the gods. The priest nods. And if you forget the maize? Another boy whispers. Then the gods forget you. That ends the lesson. You walk away not feeling smarter, but steadier, like something ancient has taken root. You may not pass the priesthood exam, but you now know how seriously the Aztecs took time. Names, symbols, and seasons. Even the jokes mattered. Even the tamale hits carried wisdom. And later, when you find a husk in your satchel with a clumsy drawing of a jade turkey on it, you smile. Someone remembered your mistake and gave it a name. When corn gods quarrel, you're halfway through a quiet afternoon nap, face pressed into a woven reed mat, dreaming of feathered tortillas, when someone startles you awake with a loud clap and a shout. The gods are arguing again. You sit up, groggy, and blink into the courtyard where a group of priests in full regalia are staging what looks like a theatrical brawl between corn gods. Feathered capes fly. Maize tassels wave menacingly. One priest, wearing a giant corn mask, dramatically flops to the ground like he's been emotionally wounded by overwatering. You're not hallucinating. This is a ritual reenactment of one of the most peculiar myths in the Aztec spiritual world. A story that explains why the calendar sometimes shifts, why harvests fail, and why the gods themselves are not above a little divine drama. Today, a priest announces, we tell the tale of the four maize brothers, the gods of the cardinal directions, who could not agree on who deserved the first offering. Mainstream history moment. Many Aztec myths involve conflicting deities, especially among natural forces. While many cultures give us sun versus moon or storm versus sea, the Aztecs weren't afraid to pit corn gods against corn gods. The four maize deities, each aligned with a color and direction, were seen as both cooperative and combative. Like celestial siblings with way too much power and not enough patience. In the center of the courtyard, they've built a stage made entirely of maize stalks. Four actors take their place: white corn of the east, red corn of the south, black corn of the west, and yellow corn of the north. Each has their own crown, staff, and sense of theatrical flair. White corn steps forward first. I bring the dawn, he declares. The new beginning. I should be fed first. Red corn counters with fire and flare. No. I am the heat that makes seeds grow. Offerings are mine. Black corn shakes his head solemnly. You all forget that I feed the dead. I carry the weight of endings. I deserve the first flame. Yellow corn just shrugs. I'm the only one anyone eats. Fair point. Here's your quirky fact. There are recorded Aztec ceremonies in which priests staged arguments between gods. Not only as teaching tools but as part of actual calendrical adjustments. When the seasons didn't align, when maize ripened too early or too late, they interpreted this as divine conflict, and then performed rituals to settle the quarrel. The ritual performance continues, now escalating to what can only be described as a slow-motion maize wrestling match. Feathers fly. One corn god accuses another of hoarding sunlight. Another blames the stars for being too predictable. The youngest god claims his kernels are glossier, which sparks a round of dramatic gasps and pearl clutching. Then, suddenly, a priest dressed as Shalut, the canine underworld companion, enters the stage to break it up. Enough, he growls, dragging his obsidian tail behind him. The calendar suffers while you squabble. Choose a mediator. They all shout at once. One yells, let the people decide. Another says, let the fire choose. The youngest suggests, let's toss a tamale and see where it lands. They settle on this last option. A giant tamale is produced, yes. A real one, painted gold and wrapped in ceremonial husks. It's thrown into the fire. Wherever it bursts, that god wins the season. Today, it explodes toward the north. Yellow corn roars in triumph. The others bow. The high priest declares, for this cycle, yellow corn rules the planting days. But all must be fed. Then comes your favorite part, the calendar dance. The performers now each hold a stone slab painted with glyphs. They move through a choreographed routine, rotating in and out of alignment, mimicking how the day signs flow through the year. When two gods collide, a small puff of cornmeal explodes from their sleeves. It's part comedy, part theology, and strangely profound. Historians still argue. A nearby acolyte whispers whether this myth was created to explain calendrical drift, or if calendrical drift created the myth. You nod, because at this point, you believe both could be true. After the play ends, you're invited to the aftermath ritual, the Feast of Apologies. 4 large pots of maize stew are prepared, one for each direction. You're supposed to taste each, say a short blessing, and pick your favorite. Each stew has a subtly different flavor profile: earthy, spicy, sweet, smoky. You take your time, choose carefully. A child tells you, your answer will offend at least 3 gods. You pick the smoky black corn stew. Everyone gasps. The West, Someone murmurs, "Bold choice. A funeral flavor." Later, you find out that some of these theatrical festivals also included voting, yes. Actual votes. Communities would cast maize kernels into baskets to choose which deity would guide the next planting cycle. It was part ritual, part community engagement, part celestial polling. Tonight, the priests lead a quiet ceremony around the fire. They chant the names of each corn god and offer thanks for their strength and their disagreements. Balance, one says, is not when no one argues. It's when everyone takes turns listening. Before bed, you're handed 4 colored kernels: red, white, black, and yellow. You're told to scatter them around your sleeping mat, so no god feels left out. You do so carefully, whispering thanks to each direction. As you drift off, you imagine the 4 maize brothers in the sky, still bickering, still watching, but also smiling. Because in the Aztec world, even divine conflict is just another way of keeping the calendar interesting. The calendar stone that eats time. You stand now before something ancient, massive, round, and radiating quiet power. No fire, no smoke, no chanting, just stone. A single, silent face carved into time. You're staring at the Aztec sunstone, or as your priest guide casually refers to it, the stone that eats time. It's taller than a man, wider than 2, and weighs so much you suspect the gods themselves had to roll it into place. At first glance, it looks like a decorative wheel, circular, symmetrical, pleasing to the eye, but as you step closer, you realize it's not a wheel. It's a clock, a map, and a mouth, and it's hungry. Mainstream history nugget. Often misidentified as simply a calendar. The sunstone, or Piedra del Sol, is more accurately understood as a cosmic diagram. It represents the Aztecs' worldview, time, space, divinity, and destiny all layered into one colossal sculpture. And yes, it was used for calendrical and ceremonial purposes. But it also tells a story, a terrifyingly cyclical one. At the very center is the face of Tonatiuh, the sun god. He's sticking out his tongue, and that tongue is a sacrificial blade. The message? The sun feeds on blood. Time is sustained by offering. Without it, the world goes dark. Surrounding the face are 4 previous worlds, the 4 suns that came before our current age. According to Aztec myth, each one ended in catastrophe. One in jaguars, another in wind, one in fire, and one in water. All were destroyed, wiped clean, and now we're in the 5th sun, the current age, which, fun fact, is also prophesied to end in earthquakes. So, sleep tight. You step closer. The outer rings are carved with day signs, 20 of them. In order: crocodile, wind, house, lizard, and so on. Each one perfectly spaced, etched like the tick marks on a god's wristwatch. These are the heart of the Tonalpohualli. Then comes the solar year layer, the 365-day calendar woven around it, showing the festivals, the sacred days, the corn harvests, the omens. Altogether, it's not just a calendar, it's an active machine of belief. Quirky fact: the sunstone wasn't just hung on a wall for inspiration. It was originally horizontal, placed flat in the ceremonial precinct of Tenochtitlan, most likely used for rituals, alignments, or maybe even as a sacrificial platform. Imagine laying someone on top of your calendar and asking the sky if the appointment is confirmed. Historians still argue. Your priest murmurs as he runs a finger along the outer rim. Whether the stone was meant to count days, or to control them. He says this without a trace of irony. Some say it guides the calendar. Others say it contains it. As you walk around the circumference, you notice the precision. Every glyph has weight, shadow, balance. There's no improvisation here. It's deliberate, terrifyingly so. There's a spiral of glyphs near the base that no one seems eager to explain. You ask. The priest pauses. That's where the cycle resets. He says, when the sun falls, when the next world begins. You ask what that looks like. He points upward. Look at the sky. You'll know when it stops looking back. Lovely. Nearby, a smaller slab shows an earlier attempt at a similar diagram, but it's messier. Incomplete. You get the sense that the sun stone isn't just a monument to time. It's a corrected version, like a teacher's final draft. After centuries of erasing and redrawing the cosmos, children are gathered at the edge, drawing their favorite day signs with chalk on the stone floor. One draws, dog. Another, death. One kid doodles a corn cob with legs and declares it, lunch day. No one corrects him. You crouch down and run your hand over the glyph for, lizard. Your day. It's here, carved into stone, immortal. Suddenly, your life feels oddly permanent. Then the priest smiles and offers you a corn cake shaped like the sun stone. It's surprisingly detailed. Even the tongue knife is rendered in chocolate. Eat it, he says. It reminds the gods we're watching the clock. 2. You take a bite. Crunchy on the outside, sweet inside. Time, apparently, tastes like toasted corn and ancient sugar. That night, the priests hold a fire watch, a silent observance where they place candles on the outer rim of the stone. One for each cardinal direction. As each burns down, they chant the names of the past worlds. 4 jaguar, 4 wind, 4 rain, 4 fire. Each one flickers, fades, extinguished. Then they reach 4 movement, the 5th sun. Our sun, still burning. For now, they let the last candle drip wax into the center of the stone. Right over the tongue blade. It hisses faintly, steam curling upward like a sigh. You live in a borrowed world. The priest whispers. Every tick of the stone is a promise, and a threat. You lie on your mat that night, eyes wide open, thinking about time not as a line, but as a stone circle spinning slowly beneath your feet. And somewhere in the sky, you swear you see Tonatiuh wink at you. Or maybe he's just hungry. Calendar versus conquest. This morning feels different. The village is quiet, not in a sacred, hushed way, but in the uncomfortable stillness of people holding their breath. The birds aren't singing. The usual priest with the feathered hat doesn't greet you at the courtyard gate. You hear murmurs instead, short phrases, tense voices. You follow the sound to the central plaza, where a circle of elders and priests stand around a large bark paper codex, opened. Frayed, trembling slightly in the breeze. A priest looks up. We are recalculating, he says softly, because the foreigners, they brought their own time. Today, you learn that the calendar was also a battlefield, and when the Spanish arrived, they didn't just conquer the people. They tried to conquer the rhythm. Mainstream historical foundation. During the Spanish conquest of the Aztec Empire in the early 16th century, conquistadors were baffled, even disturbed, by the complexity of Aztec timekeeping. Hernán Cortés and his men dismissed the calendars as pagan nonsense. Despite their mathematical precision, they destroyed codices, toppled sacred sundials, and imposed European time systems, a 7-day week, Roman months, church holidays, and leap years, not just to organize, but to erase. You're shown a broken solar disk. The priest lifts it gently. They laughed. He said we didn't know what time it was. He smiles without warmth. Then their crops failed. Because here's the twist. While the conquistadors sneered at the Tonalpahualli and Xopahualli, they struggled to grow wheat. The rainy season confused them. The dry season betrayed them. The maize, stubborn and sacred, refused to grow under their rhythm. The priests took this as a sign. The gods were loyal. The calendar still lived, even under boots and swords. Quirky fact. For a brief time, some Aztec communities secretly kept their calendars alive, hiding codices inside walls, teaching glyphs through corn dolls, or even embedding calendar math into weaving patterns passed down through generations. One woman shows you a shawl passed from her grandmother's grandmother, 20 spirals along the edge. Each one a day sign, a secret hymn in thread. You're invited to witness a strange ritual. It's called the rebalancing. It only happens once every few years. When the priests reconcile the colonial calendar with the old one, it involves smoke, mirrors, and a disturbing amount of math. In the courtyard, 2 codices are unrolled side by side. One is the Codex Bourbonicus, brightly painted, still intact. The other is a faded Gregorian chart, scribbled in Latin. A priest from the old temple stands next to a boy who's been taught both systems. Together, they calculate. When will the next one rabbit day fall on a Christian Sunday? How often does 8 wind land on a saint's feast day? Turns out, it's more frequent than you'd expect. Historians still argue. One priest mutters as he pours a line of ash between the two calendars. Whether these overlaps were coincidence, or whether the gods, in mercy or mockery, allowed their rhythms to echo through the conqueror's time. You watch as the two calendars align. Just for a moment, one glyph overlaps with a Latin date, August 13, 1521. A priest exhales slowly. The fall of Tenochtitlan. They mark it in red ink and whisper the name of every fallen timekeeper. The sky darkens slightly. A wind rises. The maize fields outside the temple bend. Someone starts a slow chant, not loud, not sad, but steady, like a heartbeat refusing to stop. In a nearby chamber, you're shown a hidden codex drawn after the conquest. It's smaller, subtler. The glyphs are simpler. Some are disguised as flowers, birds, or random patterns. We wrote time into beauty, the priest says, so they would not burn it. You run your hand across the page and feel a pulse, not literal, but powerful. A reminder. Time adapts, even when broken. And here's something strange. Despite everything, destruction, conversions, burned libraries, the calendar survived. In mountain villages, farmers still plant by moon signs. Families still hold ceremonies on old festival days. Grandmothers still whisper names like 1 flint and 4 rain when the wind shifts. That night, a ceremony is held. It's not joyous. It's not mournful. It's somewhere in between, a quiet honoring of the calendar keepers who carried the rhythm through fire and blade. The priests dress in simple white. No feathers, no face paint, just silence and cornmeal. You're handed a bundle of dried maize, each cob wrapped in cloth marked with both glyphs and Roman numerals. You hold it close, realizing this is more than a keepsake. It's a declaration. We kept counting. The ceremony ends not with a drum, but with the gentle clinking of maize kernels poured into a bowl. The priest says, "They thought we would forget. But time has memory." You lie under the stars and feel the pulse of two worlds, one written in glyphs, the other in numbers. They don't always agree, but for tonight, they hum together. And in your dreams, the calendar doesn't end. It simply turns a quiet page. Secrets buried in granaries. It starts with a whisper. A young acolyte pulls you aside while you're helping stack dried maize in the temple storehouse. "Want to see something the others don't talk about?" he asks. Eyes wide with a mischievous spark. You glance around. No one seems to notice, and follow him through a narrow corridor at the back of the granary. Behind a curtain of woven reeds and between 2 crumbling clay jars, he leads you to a low crawl space, more of a shadow than a room. Inside, barely lit by a shaft of dusty light, lies something wrapped in leather and tied with corn husks. Carefully, reverently, he pulls it open. It's a codex, faded, charred at the corners. Some pages are smudged beyond recognition, others still vibrant, painted glyphs, celestial charts, even strange geometric spirals. "This," he whispers, "is the lost calendar." You kneel beside him. Every page feels like a heartbeat. Mainstream historical anchor. During the conquest, many sacred books, codices, were hidden in granaries, caves, or burned outright. A few survived, often by accident or disguise. Some priests and elders memorized their contents, passing them down orally. Others created hybrid versions, blending old calendar math with Christian holidays and colonial rhythms. These hybrid codices are still the subject of scholarly debate, and sometimes found in the most unexpected places. This one, the acolyte says, was written after the sky cracked. You pause. You mean an eclipse? He shakes his head. A great storm. And a betrayal. The high priest forgot to count a day. The maize died, so they wrote a new alignment. A secret one. He flips to a page marked with the symbol of 3 flint. The day of trials. There, scribbled in the margins, is a note. The stars no longer speak in order. Listen to the soil. And that's your quirky gem. Some priests believed that when celestial signs became unreliable, clouded by war, famine, or conquest, The soil itself would speak. Cracks in the earth, failed harvests, insect patterns, even the way roots grew were all seen as signs from the gods. A cracked cob could mean a skipped ritual. A twisted stalk? A miscounted day. You ask if anyone still uses this version of the calendar. The acolyte smiles slyly. Sometimes, he says, when the regular days don't work. Back in the main granary, maize is sorted by color, size, dryness, but the real secrets, it turns out, are in the placement. In the far wall are dozens of clay jars, each labeled not with dates, but with glyphs. One jar reads, 1 death. Another, 7 water. Another, just a spiral. These aren't food stores, he tells you. They're time stores. Every jar holds maize collected on a specific day sign. If something goes wrong, a drought, a failed birth, a storm out of season, priests open the matching jar, burn a handful of kernels, and read the smoke. They say each kernel remembers the day it was harvested, and can help reset the rhythm when time begins to falter. Historians still argue. The acolyte says as he leans against a bag of red corn. Whether these emergency alignments were ever written into the main calendar, or if they were only whispered, passed between the granaries, like seeds in waiting, you explore further. At the far end of the room, you find a stone slab pressed into the ground. Its surface is etched with a double spiral, one turning inward, the other turning out. Around the edge are 20 glyphs, familiar now, forming the sacred day cycle. But there's a 21st glyph, one you've never seen before. It's a maize cob wrapped in fire. The acolyte kneels. That's the glyph of the forgotten day. You raise an eyebrow. They say that long ago, one day was lost, miscounted, skipped, not erased, just left behind. And now, it hides, waiting. When it returns, everything changes. You ask what kind of change. He shrugs. Maybe the end of this sun. Maybe just a really strange harvest. There's more. He shows you a scroll hidden inside a cracked pot. It's written in a hybrid language, part Nahuatl, part Spanish, part pictograph. It outlines a shadow cycle, a series of days used only during times of catastrophe, betrayal, or astronomical confusion. Each day has no number, just a name: dust, echo, glass, bone, root. They don't belong to any god, he says, or maybe they belong to all of them. You realize this is a backup calendar, a spiritual contingency plan. Not just for agriculture or ritual, but for reality itself. Back outside, you help carry baskets of corn to the temple kitchen. But now you see it differently. Every kernel is a time capsule. Every jar, a clock. The granary isn't just storage, it's a temple of days. That night, the acolyte slips you a small token, a carved stone shaped like the 21st glyph. Just in case the forgotten day finds you, he says. You hold it tight under the stars, wondering, how many calendars are there? How many have we lost? Buried beneath food, fire, fear, and more importantly, how many are still waiting to be found? Weather prophecy by corn stalk. The day begins with a procession, not of people, but of plants. You wake to the sound of rustling. Outside the temple, dozens of maize stalks are being carefully carried through the village by elders. Each one held like a musical instrument. Not for planting, not for eating, but for listening. Today is the annual weather-reading ritual, when the most respected farmers, priests, and sky watchers gather to ask the corn what the heavens are planning. It sounds absurd at first. Corn as a weather forecaster? But then again, you've spent the last 2 weeks watching people read time from tortillas, track Venus with smoke, and decode destiny from tamales. By now, you know better than to laugh. You just fall into line behind a priest holding a particularly elegant stalk. Mainstream historical core. While the Aztecs didn't have meteorology in the modern sense, they absolutely tracked weather, and not just through observation of the sky. They studied maize closely, the way it grew, the way it bent, how its tassels moved in the wind, if the leaves curled too soon, if the silk came late, if the stalk leaned without reason. These were considered signs. Nature didn't just reflect time, it predicted it. You're led to the field of reading. A stretch of land just outside the ceremonial plaza, where rows of maize are left unharvested for this specific purpose. It's surrounded by prayer stones, offerings, and rows of obsidian mirrors sunk into the dirt to reflect sky movement. Each elder picks a stalk and kneels. You're told to do the same. Your knees hit the warm earth. The priest beside you gently shakes the stalk, listening as it rustles. He nods thoughtfully. North wind in 3 days. He mutters, soft rain, but stubborn. You hear nothing. Try again, he urges. You place your ear close to the leaves. And suddenly, maybe, it does sound like something. A whisper? A hush? Or maybe it's your own breath bouncing back at you. Still, you whisper, mild storms? He nods solemnly. Possibly. You're not terrible. Quirky tidbit of the day. In some communities, especially in rural highland regions, individual maize stalks were assigned names, titles, even roles, like, stalk that warns of drought, or, the one that leans when hail comes. Families kept track of specific plants across seasons. Noting their accuracy, you begin to suspect that some stalks had reputations better than local politicians. The elders move on to tassel testing, pulling gently at the silk atop each ear and seeing how much resistance it gives. Soft draw, no snap. One says, that means no frost next moon. They then lay ears of corn on flat stones, split them open, and inspect the kernels, the spacing, the color, the presence of sky cracks, tiny lines that, if found in just the right place, indicate weather irregularities. You're handed a small ear with a distinct crack along the center. That's a thundertooth, one priest says, means lightning without rain. You glance up, concerned. He shrugs. Only if it echoes twice. Some of the predictions are practical, rainfall, wind direction, the length of the growing season. Others are more poetic. One woman holds a twisted stalk and proclaims, the wind will argue with the moon. Everyone nods. You nod too. It sounds like something you'd see on an embroidered pillow. Historians still argue. A young acolyte says, handing out cups of maize tea, whether these corn-based weather readings were accurate or symbolic, but some swear their ancestors could tell the exact day the rain would arrive just by licking the husk. You try licking one. Tastes like dirt. You move on to the stalk circle, where 12 chosen stalks are arranged like the hours of a clock. As the wind blows, priests watch which stalks bend first, which last, and how quickly they recover. It's like watching a green sundial, except it moves when the air decides. When the wind hits your chosen stalk and it bends east, the priest leans over and whispers, you'll dream of water tonight. Sure enough, a little later, someone hands you a small clay bowl of cloudy liquid. Maize broth, they say, infused with predictive pollen. You sip it. It tastes like liquid hay. Then you sneeze 4 times in a row. Ah, a priest says. That means the rain is 7 days away. Apparently, your sinuses are now a weather oracle. As the sun climbs, everyone gathers for the official reading. Each priest reports what their stalk said, and the results are compiled on a large bark paper scroll. You watch as symbols are painted rapidly, clouds, wind swirls, lightning, eyes, corn ears, spirals. You spot your cracked cob represented by a glyph resembling a lightning bolt biting a fish. The final verdict, mild rains, 1 storm, and a stubborn sun. No drought, no flood, a good omen. To close the ceremony, the community offers a bowl of maize kernels to the wind. The bowl is tossed high, and as the kernels scatter, everyone listens. Some hit stones, others land softly in soil. A few bounce off ceremonial drums. It sounds chaotic, random, but to the ears around you, it's music, it's warning, it's confirmation. That night, a small rain begins to fall. Not enough to soak the ground, but enough to make the maize leaves shiver with quiet delight. The priests smile. The stalks were right. You lie on your mat, staring at the woven roof above, thinking how strange and beautiful it is that a plant, tall, leafy, quiet, could carry messages from the sky. That a field could be a calendar. That a husk could hum. You wonder, what else in the world have we stopped listening to? And as the rain taps gently against the thatch above, It sounds like time itself. Falling in kernels. Festival of flammable corn dolls. Today is no ordinary day. You know this because the courtyard smells like burnt sugar and anxiety. People are moving quickly, carrying straw effigies shaped like corn gods, setting up colorful altars, and digging shallow fire pits. A little girl runs past with a doll on fire. No one panics. They cheer. Welcome to the Festival of Flammable Corn Dolls, a celebration of renewal, sacrifice, and timing so precise it's been calculated to fall on a single-day sign that arrives only once every few years. The priest greets you with a soot-streaked grin. Ready to meet the gods and set them on fire? You nod slowly. Obviously, this is one of the most anticipated festivals in the entire calendar cycle. It blends joy, reverence, chaos, and pyrotechnics in a way that makes modern holidays seem embarrassingly tame. And at the center of it all? Maize, but not the kind you eat. The kind you build, dress, and burn. Mainstream historical background. Festivals like this one were anchored to specific calendar alignments, often involving the convergence of both the Tonalpohualli and Siopahualli cycles. When these two calendars synced in symbolically powerful ways, it created portal days, windows where time was thin, and the gods were thought to walk among humans. To honor, or appease, them, communities would create effigies of maize deities using straw, husks, and paint. Then, they set them ablaze. In the temple courtyard, artisans are hard at work. You're handed a bundle of straw, some string, and dried corn husks. Your task? Build your own god. You watch as others sculpt elaborate figures. One with jaguar claws and a maize headdress. Another with a skeletal chest and eyes made of polished beans. You try to make a lizard-shaped maize doll, your day sign, but end up with something that looks like a nervous duck. A nearby elder nods anyway. It's got spirit. Next comes the painting. Each doll is decorated with color based on its direction and purpose. Red for the south and fire. White for the east and rebirth. Black for the west and endings. Yellow for the north and memory. And green, always green, for maize. No matter where it goes. Quirky detail. Some dolls have tiny glyphs painted onto their bellies. These are intent signs, representations of wishes, dreams, regrets, or sacrifices being offered through the flames. You paint yours with a spiral, symbolizing continuance, the hope that what ends today will seed something tomorrow. Nearby, a group of children are whispering to their dolls. You ask why. A priest leans in. You must tell it what it carries. Otherwise, it might return. Return? As a shadow, he says with a shrug. Or as a dream. Or worse, as an unlucky wind. You whisper to your maize lizard duck. You carry my fear of forgetting. It feels strangely powerful. Historians still argue. One elder says while threading corn silk into a doll's belt, whether these festivals were meant to purge individual burdens or communal ones. Some think it was about shifting fate. Others say it was just a very well-timed release. Now it's time for placement. The dolls are lined up on long stone slabs according to their day sign category. Some are warriors, others are rainbringers, tricksters, or guardians. The priests double-check the calendar alignment, confirming that this particular day, 5 Wind, coincides with the 14th month of the solar calendar, the one devoted to dust, smoke, and hidden voices. Perfect. Each doll is blessed, sprinkled with powdered maize, and given a pinch of salt, to remind them they once had bodies. The priest says. Then comes the lighting. Children with torches lead the first wave. The flames catch quickly. Straw crackles, husks crumple, pigments twist into the air like dancing spirits. The entire courtyard begins to glow with life and death at once. Some people watch in silence. Others chant. A few weep. But many laugh, not because it's funny, but because it's freeing. You hold your own doll in both hands. Heart racing. A priest bows his head and gestures. You step forward and place it carefully on the altar. Then, with a trembling breath, you touch your torch to its feet. It ignites. And in that moment, something shifts. The fire rises, not just physically, but emotionally. Your breath catches. The flames reflect back into your eyes. And for a heartbeat, you swear the doll bows. You step back. One of the priests places a warm hand on your shoulder. You let it go. He says, once the last doll is ashes. The community gathers around the smoldering piles. The ashes are carefully swept into 4 baskets, each representing a direction. These will be scattered at sunrise, into the river, the fields, the wind, and the fire pit. Then comes the corn cleansing. Everyone is given a cup of atole, a warm, thick maize drink. Not for ritual this time. Just comfort. You can't burn without feeding. Someone says, you sip. It tastes of cinnamon and grounding. As night falls, people begin placing maize kernels in small, wax-sealed jars. These are time seals, meant to keep the intention of the burned dolls intact. 1 kernel per doll, per person. You're handed a jar and drop one in. What now? You ask. The priest smiles. Now, the gods decide what to do with your offering. And you go to sleep lighter. You lie down under the stars. Ash in the air, corn in your belly, and the faint scent of fire still curling into the breeze. You think of your lopsided duck lizard. Now smoke. And for once, time doesn't feel like something counting down. It feels like something being made new. The priest's dream journal. Tonight, the fire burns lower than usual. The air feels heavier, not with heat, but with expectation, as though everyone is holding their breath for something not yet spoken. You're invited to a small chamber tucked behind the main temple, lit only by a single obsidian lamp. Inside sits an elder priest, cross-legged on a mat, a rolled bundle of painted bark resting in his lap. This, he says softly, is my dream journal. He doesn't mean it metaphorically. It's an actual, physical codex, each page painted with glyphs, creatures, spirals, and maze, always maze. But these aren't records of ceremonies or omens in the sky. These are visions, recorded by priests after long nights of dreaming. Because in the Aztec world, time was not only marked by the sun and stars, but by what visited you in sleep. Mainstream historical thread. Dreaming was considered sacred by the Aztecs. Priests often recorded their dreams, especially those that occurred on specific day signs or during fasting rituals. These dreams were believed to contain messages from the gods, indicators of upcoming shifts in the calendar, or even direct instructions for planting, sacrifice, or healing. Some dreams became calendar law. The priest unrolls the journal. You see a glyph of a lizard wrapped in maize silk. That came on 7 lizard. He says, I dreamt of a harvest that never stopped. The gods told me it was time to end a drought ceremony. We did, and the rains came. He flips another page. A skull floats above a field of corn. This was one death. I dreamt that the wind stopped, and the maize grew without breath. I advised the city to rest. We cancelled the fire festival that year. He smiles faintly. Some called it foolish, but none died that season. You're drawn into the images. Some are terrifying, burning stalks, bleeding moons, jaguars with empty eyes. Others are gentle, laughter in a field, birds nesting in maize tassels, a child playing with a corn husk puppet that slowly grows roots. The priest points to one in particular, a mirror cracked down the middle, with a kernel glowing inside. That's the day I dreamt the calendar would slip. He says, we adjusted the cycle by a day. No one else saw it. But I did. You blink. You changed the calendar because of a dream? He nods solemnly. The gods do not always send messages with thunder. Sometimes, they whisper behind your eyes. Quirky gem. Some codices reveal that major calendrical changes, like festival postponements or cycle resets, were sometimes based entirely on visions from high priests. If the dream occurred on a day with cosmic importance, say, a 5 wind or 13 flint, it was taken as absolute. You ask how he knows which dreams are real and which are just dreams. He chuckles. That's the real priesthood test. Knowing when your thoughts are yours, and when they're echoes. He teaches you the basics. When you dream on a day ruled by Tezcatlipoca, the god of mirrors, you're likely to see deception, shadows, double meanings. But dream on a day ruled by Xochipilli, god of flowers and song, you may glimpse healing, joy, or fertility. You realize it's not just about dreams, it's about context. Every dream has a calendar shell. A date that gives it color, direction, purpose. The priest hands you a brush and a scrap of bark. You'll dream tonight, he says. Try to remember. Try to draw. Sure enough, when you finally lie down, head full of spirals and smoke, sleep overtakes you quickly. You drift into a dream where you're walking through a field of floating maize, no ground, no sky, just stalks suspended in light. One cob opens, revealing a tiny obsidian mirror. Inside it, your own face, painted with the glyph for 3 wind. You wake up, heart pounding, and scramble to draw. It's not perfect. A lopsided stalk, a strange breeze, a mirror like a fish. You bring it to the priest, and he studies it. Not bad, he says. That's a message about transition. Something will pass soon, something you'll be asked to carry. You ask if it's real, if the dream matters. He presses your drawing into the bark paper journal, beside one of his own. Now it does. Historians still argue, he says gently, whether these dreams were divine inspiration or the unconscious organizing memory. But we don't argue, because they always arrive when they're supposed to. That night, the community gathers around the fire for the sleepwatch, a ceremony where everyone is encouraged to dream at the same time. Under the same star, the priests chant softly. No drums, just breath, just maize, just stars. You lie back. The earth is warm. You're handed a kernel of corn to hold through the night. It anchors you, someone says, and as your eyes close, you feel the hush of hundreds breathing together, dreaming, listening, preparing for the next message time might send. Because calendars can be carved, sung, painted, burned, eaten, but sometimes, they are dreamt. Counting time backwards, you awaken to a strange sensation. The priests are walking backwards through the temple. Silent, slow, faces calm, eyes forward, but feet moving in reverse. It's not a prank. It's not a ritual rehearsal. Today, you're told, is a day when time doesn't move forward. It retreats. A rare ceremony, one reserved for certain days in the Tonalpahuali, requires everything to be done in reverse. The songs, the footsteps, the incense offerings, even the calendar readings. Today is a day not for planning ahead, but for looking back. You're about to learn that time, in the Aztec world, wasn't just a straight line, it was a loop that pulsed in both directions. Your guide hands you a codex, but instead of turning the pages from right to left, he begins at the end and reads backward. It's dizzying. The glyphs feel like they're unraveling the past. This is how we unwind the year. He explains, to remember what we've missed, what we've misplaced, what we've owed. Mainstream history highlight some Aztec rituals, especially those tied to death, drought, or eclipse, included retrograde calendar readings. These weren't just symbolic, they were essential. Certain cycles had to be counted backward to balance the spiritual equation. Much like walking backward to retrace your steps after disturbing sacred ground. Days weren't just passed, they were occasionally reversed. As though the gods demanded a rewind. You join the procession moving counterclockwise around the fire altar. With each step, a priest announces a day sign in reverse order. Dog, rain, jaguar, death. It's haunting. Familiar signs, but they feel more like echoes than names now. The high priest places a maize kernel in your hand. Today, he says, you hold the last kernel. The one that remembers everything before it. He asks you to name the last 3 days you remember, what you ate, who you saw, what you thought before sleep. You list them. He nods and ties a thin cord around your wrist. Now, he says, walk them backwards, one thought at a time. You close your eyes. With each backward step, you revisit your memories in reverse. You uneat a tamale. You unsay a prayer. You unhear a flute. It's oddly comforting. In a shaded alcove, elders are playing a game with maize kernels, tossing them onto a painted board. But instead of scoring forward, they mark backwards, removing stones instead of placing them. This is how we erase guilt. One says, you must count backward to where the fault began. The game ends with an empty board and a quiet smile. Now you can go forward again. She says, quirky insight of the day. Aztec culture had specific calendrical rituals of reversal, often performed during times of mourning, repentance, or significant endings. In some codices, days are crossed out in descending order, indicating not loss but release. A way to wind time down gently, like blowing out a candle wick. Back in the courtyard, a priest carves glyphs in reverse order into a clay tablet. You recognize them. They mark today's retrograde procession. This tablet won't be read by others. It will be buried beneath the maize field, like a time offering. Returning days to the earth. Historians still argue. Your guide says as he dusts clay from his robes, whether backward counting was meant to correct error, honor the dead, or simply mark time's soft decline. He gazes at the horizon. But we know this. When the world ends, it won't crash. It will just step gently back. You're invited to a storytelling circle. Each tale begins with the final moment, then winds its way to the beginning. A boy tells a story about a god who forgot how to shine and had to return to his own birth. A girl recounts the unraveling of a maize spirit who became a kernel again to escape sorrow. You offer your own. A dream that started with fire and ended in quiet. The priest nods. You've remembered well. As the sun lowers, shadows stretch the opposite way. You notice the fire's smoke curling into the ground, or so it seems. Everything feels like it's pulling inward, not outward, like time is exhaling, not breathing in. Before sunset, the final ritual begins. Each person is given a small piece of bark paper with their named glyph and a symbol representing their most recent dream. One by one, people step forward, place the paper into a bowl, and light it from below. Not to burn it, but to let the flame withdraw. The ashes are collected and stirred counterclockwise into a pot of maize flour. Tomorrow, they'll make tamales from this, to eat what we've left behind. The priest says, as darkness falls, there is no closing chant, no finale. Everyone simply turns and walks away, backward. No one speaks, no one laughs. You follow, feeling the weight of time pressing softly against your chest. When you finally lie down, you imagine yourself undreaming the day. Your thoughts roll in reverse, the laughter, the steps, the names, and somewhere, you feel that last kernel in your palm. Still there, still full of everything you didn't say. Tomorrow, you'll start again, forward. But tonight, you rest in the arms of a day that asked nothing of you, except to remember. The last kernel falls. It's almost midnight. You sit cross-legged in the open courtyard, cloaked in the hush that settles over a place just before something ends. The fire has dimmed to a warm cradle of embers. Around you, the priests have gathered with soft voices and slower movements. No chants, no music, just the hum of breathing and the whisper of robes brushing earth. A priest places a small clay bowl in front of you. Inside it, one single kernel of maize. You've held corn in your hands all throughout this journey, burned it, planted it, read it, eaten it, dreamed it, but never like this, never with such stillness. Tonight marks the close of a rare calendar cycle, a sacred point where the Tonalpahuali and Shopahuali have looped and met, the final alignment before a new count begins. But unlike festivals with flutes and fireworks, this moment is subtle, a breath held in the dark. You're instructed not to speak, not to think forward, not even to hope, simply to witness. Mainstream fact: the Aztecs didn't just begin calendars, they ended them deliberately. Often with quiet, symbolic rituals. Some codices depict a lone kernel or flame being extinguished. Others mention offerings buried in silence. The ending was not a break, but a reset. The calendar didn't click forward like a machine. It fell, gently, like a grain slipping from a hand. The high priest, elder now, steps into the center of the circle. He holds a similar bowl. Inside, one maize kernel, painted with the glyph of the year bearer, a symbol representing both the end and the responsibility of keeping time. He raises the bowl above his head, then brings it down low, close to the earth. He whispers something, too softly to hear, and tilts the bowl. The kernel drops. It strikes the ground with a sound smaller than your heartbeat. A soft tick. And that's it. No explosion, no sign, no celestial thunderclap. Just a small, perfect end. Quirky note. Some records say the priests would pause for 13 breaths after the final kernel fell. Not 12, not 15, always 13, matching the heavens above, giving thanks for each layer of sky that had guided the days. You find yourself doing the same now, counting with your breath, each exhale like a note in a lullaby. Historians still argue. The youngest priest murmurs beside you, whether this ritual was about marking time, or letting it go. You glance down at your own kernel. It's smooth, pale yellow, and warm from your hand. You press it gently into the earth. No ceremony, just the weight of your fingers. You realize that in this quiet, you feel more than an ending. You feel a clearing, as if every day you've walked, every strange ritual, every backward step, every hushed dream, has led to this simple release. You are no longer holding time. You're letting it grow. One by one, everyone rises and leaves their kernels behind. No goodbyes, no final words, just silence. You follow, heart lighter than you expected. The image of that little corn seed imprinted on your breath. And as you walk back through the village, barefoot on the soft dirt, you swear the stars above are just a little brighter. Or maybe your eyes are finally clear enough to see them properly. Time didn't end tonight. It became fertile. And what was once a calendar is now a field. And now, as your breath slows and your thoughts soften, the story folds itself closed, like a codex being rolled gently in the arms of a tired priest. You've wandered fields made of time, stepped through cycles crafted from corn, and listened to dreams passed down in husks and fire. You've held the last kernel. You've watched it fall, and somewhere deep in your chest, maybe, you've begun to feel that same stillness, a hush, just beneath your heartbeat. There's no need to rush back. No need to check clocks or maps or calendars. Let it all drift away. Feel your limbs grow heavier, your thoughts softer, as if the night itself were planting you into the quiet. Let your muscles melt into the bed beneath you, like roots settling into cool, familiar earth. You don't have to remember the names, or the cycles, or the signs. Just rest in the rhythm, the slow, even breathing of the world when it no longer needs anything from you. The night doesn't ask questions. It just holds you, gently, like soil, like dusk. Maybe tomorrow, you'll carry a piece of this story with you. A spiral drawn in the steam of your morning tea. A whisper of maize in the wind. Or maybe not. Either way, you're safe now. You're home. You're still. Sleep well. Dream deep. And let the last ember of the calendar glow quietly behind your eyes as you drift into the warm, eternal hush.